Yarden Montgomery canceled the meeting 3 minutes before it was supposed to start, not because he was tired or uninterested, but because for the first time in years, he simply didn't want to be in the office anymore. He loosened his tie, stepped into the elevator of Montgomery Holdings, and pressed the button for the lobby. It was late, past 9, and the building had thinned out to the cleaning crew and a few exhausted junior associates. He was halfway through mentally planning his solo dinner when he spotted her. She was standing near the glass revolving doors, clutching a beige canvas tote bag to her chest, her hair pulled into a messy bun that looked like it had once been neat. Her oversized coat swallowed her frame, and her cheap heels looked like they'd lost a war with the sidewalk. Yarden paused. "You waiting for a ride?" The woman glanced up, startled, then looked back down at her phone and sighed. "I was. But my app glitched and now it says it'll be 25 minutes. He tilted his head. "You work here?" "Temp receptionist. Just until the end of the week." She gave a small shrug. "I was filling in for someone who's on leave." Yarden didn't know why he asked his next question. He didn't usually talk to people in the lobby. "Where do you live?" She hesitated. "Clinton Hill." "I'm headed that way. I'll take you." Her head jerked up. "Wait, what?" "Come on," he said, already walking toward the door. "It's freezing out. I've got a car." She blinked, still unsure, then followed. "I'm not getting in a random man's car just because he is one." "I'm your boss," he said, pushing the door open. "Technically, that doesn't make this better." His driver pulled up in a sleek black Mercedes Maybach, engine humming low. The woman stopped short and stared. "Are you serious?" she whispered. "You coming or not?" Yarden asked, already holding the back door open. She hesitated, then climbed in, gripping her bag tighter. "I swear if you try anything I won't," he cut in, amused. "I'm not that desperate." She gave him a look. "Charming." The car pulled onto Fifth Avenue as silence settled between them. Yarden leaned back against the leather seat, glancing at her from the corner of his eye. She looked tired. Not just late-night tired. The kind of tired that lived in your bones. "What's your name?" he asked. "Gianna," she said after a pause. "Gianna Ellis." "Yarden Montgomery." She turned to him slowly. "Wait, you're the Montgomery." He nodded once. Her eyes widened. "You're like the CEO." "Correct." She let out a long breath and slumped back. "So I just insulted my boss's charm." He shrugged. "You're not wrong." She let out a small laugh. "You don't look like I expected." "What does that mean?" "I don't know. Less human. More robot. You're kind of normal." Yarden looked out the window, a grin tugging at his mouth. "I'll try not to take offense." By the time they reached her neighborhood, the rain had started. Gianna reached for the door handle. "Wait," he said. "You hungry?" She looked at him, surprised. "What?" "I was going to order dinner. There's a place nearby with the best handmade pasta I've had in the city. Come eat." She blinked at him. "You want to get dinner with me? You're not that scary. You don't even know me. You got in my car." She narrowed her eyes. "You convinced me. Still counts. Come on." Gianna hesitated, then slowly nodded. "Fine. But I'm not dressing up." "You already look better than half the women I've had dinner with," Yarden said as he told the driver to head to the restaurant. The restaurant was dimly lit and intimate, tucked between two brownstones with no sign. Inside, the wine glasses sparkled and the scent of garlic and truffle filled the air. Yarden watched Gianna take it all in, as if she'd stepped into another world. "You bring all your temps here?" she asked. "Only the ones who look like they haven't eaten a real meal in 3 days." She laughed again, softer this time, and it did something strange to his chest. They ordered, and the conversation flowed too easily. She was sharp, funny, unfiltered. She didn't care who he was, not really. She talked about growing up in Queens, about her mom being sick, about juggling temp jobs and night classes and bills that never seemed to shrink. She was real. And Yarden, who usually hated small talk, found himself leaning in, hanging on every word. When dessert came, Gianna pushed it toward him. "I can't eat another bite," she said. "Then don't," he replied, breaking the tiramisu in half with his fork. "I will." She watched him for a second. "You're not what I expected." "You've said that twice now." Well, it's still true. He met her gaze. Neither are you. The silence after that felt electric. Outside, the rain had stopped. Yarden walked her to her door, hands shoved in his pockets. Thanks for the ride, she said. And the dinner. And all of it. He nodded. You're welcome. Gianna stepped back onto the first step but didn't go inside. I'll probably be fired for skipping out early tonight, huh? I canceled the meeting, Yarden said. It wouldn't be fair to fire you for something I didn't show up for either. Her eyebrows rose. You canceled it? He nodded. Why? He looked at her for a long second. I guess I didn't want to be there. Gianna's eyes searched his. Well, she said softly, I'm glad you weren't. Yarden nodded once. Me too. She turned and walked up the steps. When she reached the top, she looked back. I'll see you around Montgomery. I hope so. The door closed behind her, and Yarden stood there for a moment longer, watching the light in her window turn on. He hadn't planned the night, hadn't even wanted to talk to anyone. But somehow, a canceled meeting and a broken ride app had led to the most human conversation he'd had in years. And for the first time in a long time, Yarden Montgomery didn't feel like going home to silence. Yarden didn't go into the office the next day. He told his assistant to reroute all calls, delayed non-urgent meetings, and changed locations for an investor lunch to a private suite at the Langford. He wasn't avoiding anything, at least that's what he told himself. He just didn't feel like being surrounded by people who only ever spoke to him in numbers or strategy. Still, by 4 o'clock, he found himself in front of the building where Gianna had gotten out the night before. He didn't go in. He didn't even get out of the car. He just sat there until his driver cleared his throat and asked if he was waiting on someone. No, Yarden said. Drive. But the image lingered, the way she looked back at him from her steps. The way she'd said his name like it was both a question and a challenge. He didn't see her again until Thursday. She was walking out of the building with a paper bag in her arms, balancing a coffee cup against her chin as she tried to push the door open with her hip. Yarden was just stepping out of the elevator when he caught the coffee teetering. Careful, he said, catching it before it tipped. Gianna froze. Seriously. Her eyes flicked to the cup in his hand. You got to stop showing up when I'm mid-disaster. You looked like you needed a second hand. I would have managed, she said, nudging the door open with her shoulder. He followed her outside. Lunch run. Boss asked for sandwiches. I drew the short straw. She glanced at him. Not you. The real boss. For me, anyway. You're quitting after this week? She took the cup from him. That was the plan. He looked at her closely. Still the plan. Gianna shrugged. I've got another temp job lined up. Legal firm in Midtown. More hours. But also more fluorescent lighting and fewer windows. You don't want to stay? I want a paycheck that doesn't come with a countdown. Yarden nodded once. Come to dinner again. Tonight. She narrowed her eyes. Is this going to be a pattern with you? Only if you say yes. She exhaled through her nose, clearly undecided. You're not what I thought you'd be. I know. I'm still recovering from the shock of being called normal. That's not what I meant. She looked at him for a long moment. You're quiet. Is that bad? No, she said. It's just unexpected. He waited. Fine, she added. But it can't be another rooftop place with napkins that cost more than my rent. No promises, he said, already pulling out his phone. That night, he chose a tucked-away jazz lounge in Tribeca with velvet booths and a private table behind a thick curtain. A trio played soft blues in the corner while a server poured a glass of Barolo into Gianna's glass without her asking. She leaned back. You do this often? Dinner. This whole cloak and dagger, hidden table, wine that's older than I am thing. He rested an elbow on the table. I've had a lot of empty meals. I guess I just got good at making them feel full. Gianna looked at him, her expression unreadable. That's a bleak answer. You asked. She sipped the wine, thoughtful. You always this honest? Only when I don't have to be. She tilted her head. So why now? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he watched the way the candlelight caught strands of hair that had fallen loose around her face. You don't pretend, he said finally. I don't get that a lot. Gianna set her glass down carefully. Most people don't like it. Most people bore me. She let out a small laugh. You're a strange man, Montgomery. He leaned forward. Tell me something I don't know about you. I bite my nails when I'm nervous. I noticed. She scowled. That's not fair. Try again. Gianna tapped her fingers on the stem of her glass. Every year, on my mom's birthday, I go to the bakery near our old apartment and buy lemon cake. She hated it, but I loved it and she'd pretend she did just so I'd be happy. Yarden didn't look away. You still do it? Every year. When's her birthday? October 18th. I'll remember. Gianna stared at him like she wasn't sure if he was serious. Why? Because you told me. She looked down, lips pressing together, and for the first time, she didn't have something quick to say. Yarden reached into his coat and set a small box on the table between them. She blinked at it, then looked back up. What's that? A gift? For what? For not pretending. She didn't move. He opened it for her. Inside was a thin gold bracelet, delicate but unmistakably expensive. Hanging from it was a tiny lemon charm. Gianna swallowed. You had this made? No, he said. I had it overnight. She stared at the bracelet, her voice quiet. You don't even know me. Not yet. She looked up at him, eyes glinting. You're either very bored or very dangerous. I might be both. Gianna reached for the box slowly, then stopped. This doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have to. But it could. Yarden didn't answer. He didn't need to. They sat there while the music swelled and the wine disappeared. And for the first time in years, dinner didn't feel empty. Not even a little. Gianna didn't go into the office on Friday. She'd finished her assignment, left her badge on the desk, and walked out without saying goodbye to anyone. Not because she didn't want to, because she didn't know how. Nothing had gone the way she'd expected, not the job, not the late-night ride, and definitely not the man who now lived somewhere between her thoughts and her dreams. She sat on the edge of her twin mattress in the small room she'd rented from her cousin, staring at the bracelet on her wrist. It caught the light whenever she moved, a quiet, golden reminder of something that didn't belong in her world. She should have given it back. She knew that. But she hadn't. She hadn't heard from Yarden since the jazz lounge. And maybe that was for the best. He was temporary. A diversion. A man who lived in penthouses and made decisions that shifted markets. She was a placeholder in a borrowed coat who rotated through jobs like light bulbs. Still, when her phone buzzed and her cousin called from the hallway that someone was downstairs asking for her, her heart didn't stop racing until she opened the door and saw him standing there. Yarden wore no tie that evening. His coat was open, collar turned against the wind, and his expression was unreadable. I was hoping you'd still be here, he said. Gianna stepped onto the stoop, pulling her sweater tighter. How did you find me? You told me where you lived. I remembered. She stared at him. Why are you here? He didn't answer right away. A car idled behind him, but he made no move toward it. Come with me, he said. Gianna blinked. I'm not dressed. You won't need anything fancy. She hesitated, then glanced back at the apartment. She didn't ask where they were going. She simply followed. The car drove north past Harlem, past the Bronx, until the city lights faded and the skyline disappeared behind them. Neither of them spoke. She didn't ask questions, and he didn't offer answers. The silence wasn't heavy, but it wasn't light either. It sat between them like a thread pulled too tight. Eventually, they pulled up to a wrought iron gate. Beyond it, a gravel road wound through trees and opened into a wide, open field with a glass structure nestled in the center like a secret. What is this? She asked as he opened the door for her. My mother's greenhouse, he said. Gianna blinked. You brought me to a greenhouse? She used to grow orchids. Rare ones. The whole thing's automated now, but I keep it running. She followed him inside. The temperature changed instantly, warm, damp, fragrant. The scent of soil and citrus hung in the air. Overhead, The glass panels revealed a sky full of stars. Yarden walked ahead until they reached a small bench surrounded by tall white blossoms. He sat, motioning for her to join him. "She died when I was 19, he said, without preamble. "Heart failure. Sudden. My dad couldn't bear to come back here after that, so I kept it. Maintained it. I don't really know why." Gianna sat beside him, the humidity making her curls tighten. "You don't talk about her much, do you?" "I don't talk about anything much. So why now?" "Because you don't ask for anything." She turned to him slowly. "That's not true. You don't ask for anything from me. Maybe because I don't think you'd give it. I might." Gianna studied him for a long moment. "You brought me here just to tell me that?" "I didn't want to leave things there," he said. "At the restaurant. I haven't stopped thinking about you." She looked away. "You're used to getting what you want." "Not always. You think I'm different, and maybe I am. But that doesn't make this make sense." "I don't need it to make sense." "I do," she said, voice low. "Because I don't get to float through the world untethered. I don't have money to fall back on or people to smooth over my mistakes. I don't live in a world where something like this can just happen because it feels good." Yarden leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Then tell me what you need. And let me try." Gianna gave a soft, bitter laugh. "You can't fix me, Montgomery. I'm not trying to. You're used to solving problems. I'm not a problem. I'm a person who's still figuring out rent next month." "I know." Gianna stood, walking to the edge of the greenhouse. A misting system kicked on, sending a fine spray into the air. The lights dimmed slightly as the night deepened. "You scare me," she said without turning around. "Why?" "Because you make me want things I've spent years learning not to want." He stepped up behind her, not touching her, just close. "Like what?" "Like safety. Like being seen. Like someone choosing me for more than a night." Yarden didn't speak. Instead, he took a small key from his pocket and placed it in her palm. She stared at it. "What's this?" "A storage unit in Manhattan. Unit 7. Inside is a box. My mother's journals. Her seed records. Her sketches. I haven't opened it since she died. I want you to have it." Gianna turned slowly. "Why would you give that to me?" "Because I think you'll understand it better than I ever could." Her voice dropped. "You don't even know if I'll be around tomorrow. I'll take my chances." Tears welled in her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. She blinked them away, but he saw. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't what?" "Don't make this real. It already is." She closed her fingers around the key. "I didn't come here to fall in love with someone like you. I didn't cancel that meeting to fall in love with someone like you either." That made her smile, even through the ache in her chest. Yarden stepped closer and finally touched her, just a hand at her waist, grounding and steady. "I don't know what this is yet," he said quietly. "But I know I don't want it to end here." Gianna looked up at him, her voice barely audible. "Then don't let it." The following weeks didn't unfold like a fairy tale. There were no declarations shouted across runways or orchestras playing beneath balconies. What mattered was something quieter, more stubborn, something real. Gianna didn't fall into Yarden's world. He didn't pull her into it either. Instead, they met in the middle, one conversation, one difficult truth at a time. On a windy afternoon in late March, they stood in line at a street fair in Brooklyn, waiting for fried plantains. Yarden was adjusting to the strange novelty of being anonymous in public, and Gianna was watching him with a kind of guarded amusement. "You hate this," she said, nudging his elbow. "I don't hate it," Yarden replied, eyeing the smoke curling from a food cart. "I'm just used to food that doesn't come with a side of car exhaust." Gianna took a deep breath, smiled, and looked around. "This is where I grew up. These streets. That corner store with the broken awning? I used to steal gum from there when I was 9. "Criminal," Yarden said dryly. "I paid them back when I was 16. "I stand corrected." She turned to him. "You sure you want to know all of this? I don't come with curated playlists and rooftop views. I know exactly what you come with, he said. And I've never wanted anything more. Gianna didn't respond right away. When she finally did, her voice was softer. You're not used to being told no, are you? No, he admitted. But I'd rather hear it from you than anyone else. Later that night, they walked through Prospect Park. The wind cut through the trees, but Yarden didn't seem to notice. He kept glancing at her like he was waiting for something he hadn't yet earned. Gianna stopped under a flickering lamppost and looked up at him. What are we doing? I was hoping you'd tell me. I don't want to be a distraction, she said. You're not. I don't want to be temporary. You're not that either. Gianna crossed her arms. Then what am I? Yarden hesitated. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because it mattered too much to say it wrong. You're the first person who didn't treat me like a prize or a pawn, he said. You're the first person I've let in who didn't try to reshape me. I'm not trying to save you, Yarden. I know. That's why I want you. She studied him, eyes narrowed, cautious. You said that like it's a decision. It is. I don't fall into things. I choose them. And I'm choosing you. Gianna let the silence stretch, her breath visible in the cold air. Then, without a word, she reached up and touched his collar, smoothing it like she needed something to do with her hands. I don't need fixing either, she said. I wouldn't dare try. She looked down, then back up. I need something steady. Something I can trust. I'm not perfect, he said. I don't want perfect. I want real. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. Then you should see this. She opened it slowly. Inside was a lease agreement. Her name was on it. So was his. A modest apartment in Carroll Gardens, sunlight, wood floors, a small garden in the back. Gianna blinked. You're kidding. Not even a little. Are you asking me to move in with you? I'm asking you to let me build something with you. Not temporary. Not borrowed. He paused. Something that lasts. Gianna stared at the paper, then at him. Her throat tightened. I can pay my share. I never doubted that. She inhaled deeply, fingers still on the envelope. This is fast. I know. It's insane. Probably. She looked up at him, eyes shining. But it feels right. Yarden's hand found hers, steady and sure. Then say yes. She did. 2 months later, the apartment was filled with unpacked boxes and mismatched furniture. A lemon tree in a clay pot stood by the window. Gianna was barefoot in the kitchen, hair up, stirring sauce in a pan that sputtered like it had a vendetta. Yarden walked in, loosened his tie, and leaned on the doorframe. Smells like you're trying to impress me, he said. Gianna glanced over her shoulder. I already won you. I'm just feeding you so you don't faint during dinner. He crossed the room and kissed her cheek. I'd faint for you any time. Don't be dramatic. I'm in love with you. It comes with the territory. She turned to him, a wooden spoon in one hand. Say that again. I'm in love with you. She set the spoon down. You're going to make everything harder now. Why? Because now I have to admit I love you back. He pulled her into his arms. Good. I've been dying to hear it. She whispered it into his collarbone, right where his pulse beat steady and strong. A week later, they stood under a white canopy on a private terrace in Ravello, the sea glittering behind them. The ceremony was small, just them, a justice of the peace, and a violinist playing something soft and Italian. No reporters, no press, no curated guest list, just her and him. Yarden wore a suit without a tie. Gianna wore a dress she found in a shop by the coast. Her curls were loose, her hands steady. When the vows were done, and the papers signed, Yarden slipped a ring on her finger, a band of gold with a single lemon blossom etched into the inside. Gianna looked up at him, heart full, eyes clear. You canceled a meeting, she said. I did. You offered me a ride. I did that too. And now? Now, he said, kissing her hand, you've claimed everything I have. She smiled and kissed him back. I'll take good care of it. Gianna stood barefoot on the balcony of the Amalfi Villa, her fingers curled around a porcelain cup of espresso. Below, the sea stretched in endless shades of green and blue, and the scent of rosemary and lemon trees drifted up through the morning breeze. Her silk robe fluttered against her legs, and behind her, through the open doors, she could hear Yarden's voice low and amused on a phone call he was clearly trying to end. She stepped back inside, setting the cup down on the table beside the bed. "Tell him you'll call him in 2 days," she said, tugging the wrap tighter around her waist. "You're supposed to be off." Yarden ended the call with a clipped "yes, goodbye," and tossed the phone onto the chair without looking at it. "You're getting bossier," he said, stepping in behind her and resting his hands on her shoulders. "No," she replied. "I'm just no longer impressed by your ability to say no to the entire world except you're bored." "Fair," he murmured, brushing her hair aside and pressing a kiss to the nape of her neck. "But you should know I'm still very impressed by you. You'd better be. I married you without a prenup." He laughed, pulling her back against him. "That was a bold move. You make bold moves look easy." Gianna closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his body and the soft hum of the morning settle her nerves. They had flown in 2 days ago, choosing to spend their first summer as husband and wife in a place that felt like it existed outside time. The villa was quiet, the staff unobtrusive, and for the first time since everything had changed, there were no interruptions. But eventually, she knew they'd have to go back. To the city, to the noise, to the lives they'd built separately before they'd chosen to build one together. Gianna turned and faced him. "I've been thinking about something. Should I be worried?" "Maybe," she said, stepping away and picking up a folder from the nightstand. "I want to open something. A studio. A space for community art, workshops, installations. Something that isn't buried under gallery politics or curated for profit." Yarden arched a brow. "Where?" "Bed Stewie," she said, flipping the folder open and laying it in front of him. "There's a space on Green Avenue. It used to be a laundromat. The bones are good. It just needs a little love." He bent over the renderings she'd drawn herself. They were rough but detailed, clearly the product of late nights and stubborn vision. "You've been working on this a while," he said. "I didn't want to bring it up until I was sure." Yarden looked up at her, eyes steady. "Do you want me involved?" Gianna shook her head. "I want you to show up on opening night and pretend you're surprised." He gave a slow, approving nod. "Then I'll keep my hands off it." "You really will?" "I married you for who you are, not who I could shape you into." She reached for his hand and laced her fingers through his. "Then I guess I'll need you to help me carry paint buckets. That's the limit of your involvement." "Deal," he said, and kissed her knuckles. Later, they drove along the coast in a vintage convertible Yarden had rented without telling her. The engine purred as the cliffs blurred by, and Gianna laughed with her head tilted back, wind tangling her curls. They stopped at a roadside stand for figs and espresso, and she watched him charm the old man who owned it using the worst Italian she'd ever heard. At sunset, they returned to the villa and found a handwritten note from the staff. Dinner had been prepared and set on the upper terrace. No interruptions. A long table had been dressed in linen and candles, with plates of grilled sea bass, roasted vegetables, and warm bread. The sky above them turned to pink and lavender, and the first stars began to glow. As they ate, Gianna rested her chin on her hand and watched him. "You're different here," she said. "How so?" "Softer. Lighter." He leaned back in his chair. "Maybe that's what loving you does to me." She didn't look away. "Good. Because I love you exactly like this." Yarden reached into his jacket and slid a small velvet box across the table. Gianna's eyes narrowed. "We're not doing rings again. You already gave me one." "It's not a ring." She opened it slowly. Inside was a key, simple, silver, and old. She looked up at him. "It's the key to the greenhouse," he said. "I want it to be yours as much as mine now. I want you to decide what grows there." Gianna's fingers curled around it, and her voice caught slightly. "You really don't do anything halfway, do you? You're the first thing I've ever done completely." That night, they danced slowly on the terrace, barefoot, wrapped in the kind of silence that didn't need filling. The sea whispered below them, and the stars blinked overhead like they were watching something sacred. When he lifted her into his arms and carried her inside, she didn't protest. And when she woke the next morning, tangled in linen sheets with him beside her. She didn't feel the weight of uncertainty she used to carry like armor. She felt full, whole, chosen. After the trip, they returned to New York, and life didn't get easier, but it got better. Gianna opened her studio that fall. She named it Ellis House, and the neighborhood responded with warmth and curiosity. Kids from the block painted murals on the sidewall. Old women brought cookies. Young artists found their voices inside its brick walls. Yarden rarely missed an opening, though he always stood in the back, letting her take the spotlight. He still ran Montgomery Holdings, still flew to London or Tokyo when needed, but he always came home. She never had to wonder. In time, they bought a brownstone not far from the studio. It had creaky stairs and a crooked banister, and Gianna painted the front door lemon yellow. On Sunday mornings, they argued over records to play while they cooked. On rainy afternoons, they read in silence, legs draped over each other on the couch. One night, as autumn tipped into winter, Gianna stood in front of the greenhouse in Westchester. She wore a thick scarf, her fingers buried in gloves, and watched as Yarden lit the interior with soft golden lights. The orchids were blooming again. She stepped inside and saw what he'd done. The lemon tree from their first apartment stood in the center. Around it were rows of wildflowers, herbs, and sun-dappled glass. At the far end, a small plaque read, "For G, who taught me to grow with my hands open." She looked back at him, tears in her eyes. "Do you like it?" he asked. She nodded, unable to speak. Yarden held out his hand. "Then come home, Mrs. Montgomery." She took it without hesitation, and she never let go.